Congratulations! You've enrolled for a learnership. Welcome to the Speccon Induction. This induction will prepare you for your learnership from start to finish. What is a learnership? A learnership is an outcome-based structured learning process for gaining theoretical knowledge and practical skills in the workplace, which leads to a qualification registered on the NQF or National Qualifications Framework. It is relevant to both employed and unemployed people. A learnership has a time period of 12 months. You are expected to do all of the work required within this time period. You should have completed and signed a learnership agreement already. A learnership agreement is a tri-party agreement between the employer, the training provider, and yourself, the learner. It is important to note that as a learner you are considered an employee with a permanent or fixed term of the employer. It is beneficial to do a learnership as the qualification is nationally recognized by SAQA, the South African Qualifications Authority. A learnership has practical and theoretical components. Therefore, you're able to gain work experience if you are unemployed. And if you are employed, it helps you to get experience in areas that are outside of your current job scope. This provides the unemployed learner with a great advantage for future employment, but also gives the employed learner the required knowledge and soft skills needed for possible future promotion. A learnership can also be beneficial for personal growth and development, and may lead to better and bigger career opportunities. Key terms. POE stands for Portfolio of Evidence. In simple terms, a POE is a file in which you file your proof of work, for example, formative assessments, summative assessments, and logbook activities. A portfolio of evidence can be either an electronic POE or a hard copy POE. A completed POE with sufficient evidence is required for one to be declared competent. A logbook is an electronic format presentation where your evidence such as formative or summative assessments and workplace activities are submitted. A completed logbook with sufficient evidence is also necessary in order to be declared competent. The logbook links for each qualification will be provided under the heading Logbook. Once you click on the link, your logbook will open in Google Sheets. If you're not familiar with Google Sheets, ask your facilitator, supervisor, or manager for assistance. The Google Sheet link has all of the logbook instructions for each unit standard covered in your learnership. Below each unit standard number, you will find the logbook instruction for the work which you need to do for that particular unit standard. This work needs to be uploaded online as logbook evidence. Additionally, you can email the links for your work to your facilitator. Speccon will be your training provider. Our duty will be to ensure that we provide structured learning and support as is required. We have a learner management system or LMS that we use to record, monitor, and retain details of the education and training provided to you, the learner. We also ensure that we send you updated and relevant feedback on the progress via our LMS system. The advantage is that the stakeholders responsible for the learnership are also able to log in and monitor the progress during your learnership. The facilitators and assessors will be in constant communication with the learners. Speccon is accountable to the appropriate ETQA, Education and Training Quality Assurance, associated with the relevant qualification. It is therefore our duty that work completed will be in line with the requirements of the ETQA and will be stringently upheld. It is the employer's duty to comply with all the relevant legislations as well as to provide facilities and resources required for practical workplace experience. It is the responsibility of the employer or host company to provide the learner with supervision, mentoring, and coaching at work so that the learner is able to gain practical knowledge of the qualification being covered for the learnership. All learnerships are registered under relevant Sector Education and Training Authority or SETAs. The SETA initiates, guides, and supports the establishment of the learnerships within their scope. This body ensures that all parties meet their obligations in terms of learnership agreements. The SETA is also responsible for the implementation of the National Qualification Framework or NQF. This means that they develop and administer learnerships. They also register training providers to provide different qualifications. Speccon is accredited with MICT SETA, MER SETA, and Services SETA. You, the learner, must be able to work for the employer or host company in order to gain workplace experience. Remember, a learnership has a theoretical element, formative assessments, which constitutes up to 30% of the notional hours. The rest of the 70% is based on the practical workplace activities that are relevant to the specific qualification. You must ensure that you are available and participate in all learning and work experience required by the learnership. It is your responsibility to comply with workplace policies and procedures. You also need to ensure that all the assessments required in the specific qualification are done and submitted, as well as the completion of the timesheets or log sheets that will act as proof of the practical work related to the qualification that has been done in the workplace. Facilitated workshops will be conducted online as per scheduled dates, on the platform that is most convenient for the learner. Self-paced study. The facilitator will provide you with a project plan with the due dates of the work that needs to be covered throughout the year. Each month, there are modules you'll need to complete, and their due dates will then be communicated. It is imperative that you manage your time wisely and ensure that your work is submitted timeously. Case studies. These are scenarios that are used to illustrate a specific principle for a particular topic. Support from your facilitator or assessor. The facilitator-assessor will ensure that he or she provides you with explanations and recommendations on how you are expected to do your assessments. He or she will also provide you with the relevant feedback on the outcome of the submitted assessments. On-the-job training. These are practical activities that you do in the workplace that are related to the qualification. This will give you a better understanding as well as the experience needed for the qualification covered. For each unit standard covered, there are specific learning outcomes that must be achieved. These outcomes are assessed in the form of either 3 or 4 assessment activities. The assessment activities include formative and summative assessments, logbooks, and online examinations. Formative assessment. This assessment is undertaken in the form of classroom activities, role plays, a self-assessment, multiple choice questions, observations, and projects which seek to monitor the student's progress and provide feedback to the learner on the level of understanding of the topic covered. Formative assessments also help you to check the areas that you need to improve on. Depending on the learning structure of your learnership, the formative assessment will be done online in the form of multiple choice. You need to achieve a pass mark of 50% for you to proceed to write a summative exam. Summative assessment. This assessment is to evaluate the learner's learning and overall competencies for the specific learning outcome covered. Logbooks. This constitutes up to 70% of the learnership. It is therefore of paramount importance to spend time applying what you have learned in the theory component of your learnership. This effort is captured in your logbook. For every credit, 10 notional hours are expected. For example, if a particular unit standard earns 4 credits, you are expected to spend 40 hours covering the theoretical, minimum of 12 hours, and practical work, a minimum of 28 hours, associated with that particular unit standard. Online exam. Depending on the requirements of your learning structures, this may or may not be applicable. The exam is completed online and it is a timed exam. The pass mark for all online exams is 50%. However, we suggest that you aim higher. Each unit standard indicates the requirements or standards of competence. Therefore, the assessment can only be performed on the evidence generated by the learner. It is important that you submit all the evidence as required for your formatives, summative, logbook activities, as well as online exams, depending on the learning structure of your particular learnership. For each assessment, you are given 3 submission attempts. After your work has been graded and assessed, the assessor will give you feedback as to whether you have been declared competent or not yet competent. You will be awarded an indication of completion illustrated by a tick. The assessors use the VAR-CS principle when assessing your work. This means that they check for the following: validity, authenticity, reliability, currency, and sufficiency. It is therefore important that you check if your work covers all the aspects of the VAR-CS principle. The boxes that you will see for each activity, learner guide, or video will be ticked once you have opened your learner guide, watched the video, and completed the formative, summative, and logbook activities. Your assessor will be able to view and track your progress, as the green ticks show that you have completed the work and that it has been graded or assessed. The score for each unit standard should be 100%. If your score is less than 100%, you will need to complete remedial activities. The assessor will advise you which questions in the assessment require that remedial work. When you log on to the LMS, you are able to see your overall learnership progress, measured against the rollout plan. The rollout plan is given to you by your facilitator or assessor at the start of your learnership, and it details all of the unit standards to be covered in your learnership, along with the submission dates. What to do if declared not yet competent? If you are deemed not yet competent on your first attempt, the assessor will ensure that you are given feedback and recommendations for remedials to be done. Kindly note that you only remediate the questions that you were not yet competent in your previous attempt. The remedials will be assessed, and if you are found competent, your status for that specific unit standard will change from not yet competent to competent. It is important that you have a mentor who will be able to support you throughout the learnership by giving non-judgmental support and guidance on issues you may experience. The mentor also shares his knowledge and experience with you as the mentee. It is highly recommended that your mentor be someone who is in a senior position, such as your supervisor. To log into the Speccon Learner Management System, or LMS, you will need to have the link to the website, a username and password. You should have received an SMS or a text message and an email with the website link and your login details, which is your unique username and password. As the learner, it's your responsibility to go through the learning material, which includes videos, animations, and learner guides. It will enable you to answer the formative and summative assessments. The logbook must be done so to demonstrate the practical application of the unit standard. The first assessment to be done is the formative assessment. The summative assessment is then the last step and only becomes available after the formative assessments and logbooks are completed and graded by the facilitator. MICT learnerships, which include end-user computing or EUC, IT systems support, and business analysis, are completed online, and the deliverable is an electronic POE. Your logbook is an integral part of the learnership and will be submitted online. However, you will also need to back up your logbook evidence onto Google Drive. We will guide you if you're not familiar with Google Drive. Service CETA learnerships, which includes business practice, new venture creation, business administration, and generic management, are also completed online, but take note that the deliverable is a hard copy POE. It is your responsibility as a learner to save your work on Google Drive. You can print out your evidence and place it in your POE file once you've been instructed to do so by your facilitator. Assessment is done by the assessor, who evaluates your work as competent or not yet competent. The next phase is internal moderation, which is carried out by the internal moderator, who reviews the work done by the assessor using the VAR-CS principle. The final phase is external moderation, which is carried out by the relevant CETA, who is responsible for the final verification. This phase can be a lengthy one, as it is out of our hands and lies completely with CETA. Speccon will liaise with the relevant CETA on behalf of the learners to obtain your certificate of completion and statement of results. Issuing of certificates. This is carried by the ETQA body. However, in the interim, Speccon can issue a certificate of completion to the learners who have been deemed competent at the external moderation with the ETQA body.